Welcome. First of all, thank you very, very much for taking some time this afternoon to spend with us in discussing the graduation program from Zendesk to Salesforce. We've got a great panel and we look forward to kind of a lively discussion about it. Hopefully we'll take things from it that will help you in your journey. So with that, before we begin, there we go. Before we begin, you will be sent the recording of this. So you will have that. Feel free to share it. Feel free to connect with any of us via email, via LinkedIn, however you'd like to. And as we go through the process today, we will be, as you submit your questions, we'll do a Q&A towards the end. And we look forward to answering any of those questions if we can. So with that, I will start with the introductions. We have got a great panel for you here today. My name is Mike McBride. I'll start by introducing myself first. I'm the Vice President of Alliances and Business Development here at NeuraFlash. I've been here for the past 2 years. I am a Salesforce alum. I used to run the Service Cloud vertical for retail and did that for quite a while, and I'm excited to be here at NeuraFlash. Actually looking at the implementation side of it. I'm going to ask each of our panelists, they don't know this, where they are at right now, where they live, where their hometown is, and then what their favorite vacation spot is, because we're right around summer vacation time. So I'm based out of Detroit. You can tell by some of the memorabilia on the back wall. And then my favorite spot to go and relax is a place in northern Michigan. If you're from Michigan, you always use your hand to show people where you go. But Harbor Springs is right about here. And my favorite place to go is Harbor Springs, Michigan, which is just south of Mackinac Island. So with that, we're going to go around and I'll do a short intro, but then I will ask our panelists to give themselves a little bit further introduction. We're going to start with Kira Wonderland. She's a senior manager at Salesforce. Has been around for a great 10-year history at Salesforce. And Kira, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, also where you are and your favorite holiday spot.
Absolutely. I appreciate the tee up, Michael. I am currently now based in the Washington, D.C. area in Arlington, Virginia, recently moved from San Francisco and the mothership. Been with Salesforce for close to 10 years, spent the majority of that in sales and now on the market strategy team. So I'm based in Arlington, Virginia, and I'd have to say favorite vacation spot. We went to Tahiti last year, and that was pretty special. Clear water, lots of fish.
That is a beautiful place. Hard to drive there. Hard to drive in your car for a summer vacation, but pretty amazing place to go. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Austin McKee is a practice lead and change manager. He's been here at NeuraFlash for the last couple of years like I have. He's also a Salesforce alum. Austin, a little introduction and again, where you are at and your favorite holiday spot.
Tough questions. I am based in Columbus, Ohio. There's not many vacation areas nearby. And honestly, I'm a bit more partial to the winter vacations. So I'm going to have to say Jackson Hole is really high on that list of places I like to go. I have not had the pleasure of being there during the summer. But really appreciate everybody's time today. And of course, when we say I lead the change management practice, we are referring to change management in the sense of preparing your people and your organization to successfully adopt and use these technologies. But thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Austin. And then last but definitely not least, Mr. Patrick Berries. Patrick is the head of our product innovation team, but Patrick has got quite he's a Salesforce alum as well, and quite a history in product innovation and product development, project management, and in the customer interaction space. So Patrick, where are you today? What's your favorite holiday spot? And tell us a little bit about your background and your role here at NeuraFlash.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Michael. So I'm based out of a little town called Half Moon Bay, California, which is just outside of San Francisco. I did work for Salesforce for better than 12 years up in San Francisco and commuted from different parts of the Bay Area to that job. My favorite place to vacation during the summer, I think, probably would be Yosemite. I love the solitude, the nature, and the scenery there. It's a little harder to get into these days with restrictions and limits, but it's still one of my favorite places to go. My job at NeuraFlash is really about driving a path forward for NeuraFlash to continue to bring innovation to our customers, help them get the most out of the latest technology, and to build products at NeuraFlash that supplement what Salesforce does and what other partners out in the space do as well. And I'm super excited to be here. I've only been here about 3 months or so, but super excited about the path forward and helping customers, get the most out of the technologies, some of which I spent a lot of years building at Salesforce, and some of which are brand new, like GPT, for example. So happy to have this conversation, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Patrick. If there's one place in the country where you can go and actually feel like you might have taken a vacation, it's the Moss Inn Distillery in Half Moon Bay. And sitting out at that place and looking out over the ocean is one of the most relaxing spots you can find. So it's a nice place to be from.
Indeed.
Great. Well, listen, we're going to kind of get into the panel discussion now. And again, it's entitled Graduation. Step one in the journey is a lot of you are at organizations where you determine that, we need a different platform to help our customers. We need a different platform to help our customer service agents. We need to do maybe case management. We need to integrate channels. You went out into the wide world of CRM vendors and found Zendesk, implemented Zendesk. And Zendesk is great. It's a great platform. And for a lot of their customers, it works perfectly. So it gets up and running. It's quick, it's easy, it's a nice UI. So it works for a lot of people. But what we're finding and what we see is for some people, they get to a point where it's not quite handling the needs that they have, or their needs have changed, or they've acquired another company, or something has changed to create some situation where the platform isn't quite flexible or robust enough to do what they want. So for that percentage of Zendesk customers, the great news is they've already been on a journey of knowing that they need something to do a stronger job of helping their customers. But now they're looking for something else. So we kind of use the graduation. You went to high school. It was great. It was close to home, so it was fast. It was all in the same building, probably not on a big campus, so it was simple. And there were nice people there, and you had a good logo and a good, a good mascot. So the UI was friendly. But now it's time to graduate, and we're kind of here in the season of graduation. I know around in my neighborhood, every weekend there's lines up of cars and people going to graduation parties. So it's kind of apropos. So it's graduation time. And I'm going to kind of start it up with Patrick. And just based on your background and history, you've spent a lot of time, with customers and with vendors, talking about innovation, change, like moving from step A to step B. And when you think about it around the whole concept of CRM, of someone making a change, what are some of those conversations you're having with companies and with executives that are getting in their mind that it might be time for a change? Or what are you seeing in the industry that's causing time for change?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Michael. So as you said, I have had lots and lots of conversations with customers over the years around transitions that they want to make around service or otherwise. And it usually comes down to changes in their business, changes in the requirements of what they need to do, expansions of their business, growth, going international, more complexity, acquiring other companies that have different business lines, or the changing expectations of their customers in terms of how they talk to them and how they can interface with them. And I think one of the things that I talk to those customers about is this concept of graduation, of moving from something which suited you well for a time, but now it's time to move on. You're at this inflection point in your growth and your company trajectory, which is a time to celebrate. It's a time to acknowledge the growth that you've had, and then prepare yourself for the path forward. You don't want to go through one of these transitions and make a large investment and then replicate the exact same thing that you had before, minus the limits that may have been giving you problems. You want to think forward and set yourself up for that future growth, right? Growth is what led you to here. Now let's set you up for the growth that's to come, so you can continue that trajectory. And that may mean things like, building a flexible platform for the way that you deliver service, so that you can deliver different kinds of service than you do today. That may mean access to new channels. That may mean processes which take into account a more omni-channel approach to how you engage with customers instead of a sort of transactional approach, which many of the legacy and sort of lower end of the market systems are focused on transactional approach. And so thinking about the future and thinking about it from a positive lens, as opposed to, this is a forced change that I must do because I'm hitting this XYZ limit and therefore I have to change systems. Instead, think about it as the continuation of your growth journey and a big inflection point where you can be set up for even more growth in the future and to keep going on that trajectory. So we think a lot and talk a lot about customers in terms of not what do you have today, but what should you have next year? What should service look like in 18 months and 24 months? And making sure that from a platform perspective and an implementation perspective, we're giving you that foundation and that agility to continue to evolve as things move forward. Agility is we'll come back to this probably later, but agility is a big top of mind question for CIOs around the world today because of the changes that have happened in the last several years. COVID and changing economic conditions and changing expectations from customers have really pointed out that the ability to be flexible and adjust to changes in your business, that ability itself has a business value. It's not just where it takes you, but it's actually the ability to be agile and to be flexible that actually, it really brings a lot of that value home to your organization in the future. So thinking about this transition or this possible transition as the setup and the foundation for future growth, don't replicate everything that you have, but instead think about what you need in 24 months and recognizing that this is a step on a very positive journey. This is not a mandatory tax to be paid. This is actually the way that you get paved for even more growth. So those are some of the kind of high level topics that I talk about to customers when we're thinking about making this kind of transition.
I know that it's always, before anybody makes a transition, almost in anything in life, it's a struggle. A struggle comes up and it's something that they have to overcome. And then they start asking questions, and you ask a question, you open up that spot in your mind. When you see companies kind of, Patrick, going through this, do they take a look at those struggles, but also take a look at like what's working and what's not working, and how do we advance on the what's not working? Because it's not like you have to throw away everything you've done over the last 3, 4, 5 years. It's really kind of that stepping back and taking stock of what you had that's working and whatnot. So do you see people go through that transition?
Absolutely. I think one of the failure modes when someone goes through a major transition like this is to just blindly try to replicate everything that they've had. And that's a way to not get the most out of going through this process and this investment, right? I literally had a very major customer several years ago come to me with paper screen prints of their old system and say, I want Salesforce to do this. I want it to look like all of these screens. And we had to take a step back and talk to them about, making this kind of investment and setting themselves up for a better future and not just replicating what you have. And so having that conversation, as you said, Michael, about what's working, what's not, and what that future holds is really important foundationally at the very beginning to then start to frame everybody's efforts around those places that will pay dividends. And so it's a very important concept to think about. Leverage what you have, leverage what you know, and the things that work great, absolutely replicate those. But also re-ask yourself the question, what about this legacy stuff? What about these extra processes that are dangling around and maybe not serving us anymore? And again, what do I need to look like in 24 months so that I set myself up for that future?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank you, Patrick. So Kara, you are out there at Salesforce. There's only like 1 or 2 salespeople at Salesforce, I think, maybe thousands and hundreds of thousands of salespeople, but you spend a lot of time in the field with the sales team. You spend a lot of time in the field with customers. What are some of the things you're seeing that you kind of get the feeling like this client, this customer might be ready for graduation, might be ready to move on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Patrick teed that up really well. I like to think about it and also talk to account teams at companies want to start or need to start doing something differently because there has been complexity added to their business or their process. And when we talk about complexity, we're not talking about the number of people at the company. We're talking about, Patrick talked about M&A. And so what that means to a business when we're changing product strategy, when we're thinking about what other teams, customer-facing teams or not customer-facing teams, need to start weighing in so that we're solving our end customers' questions. There's a lot of scenarios that prompt the need to do something differently, that add complexity. And so there's one customer that I've actually had the pleasure of spending quite a bit of time with over the last year and a half. And they were using a siloed ticketing application along with Salesforce as their CRM. And they were thinking about, okay, where could AI actually help us be more attentive in the moment when we're talking to our customers, so that we're paying attention to them and spending less time half listening and half searching for the knowledge article. And where was there an opportunity for some of the maybe after work processes to be automated? And so she realized as VP of customer success that having her data sets and having her processes being separate was really impacting her team's ability to be effective, and then AI would be rendered useless. So it's not lip service. This happens all the time. There's a need to really start doing something different. And I think now with generative in the mix, this whole concept of personalization is and having an informed process means so much more.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A question I have for you, because I know Salesforce does a great job with this when they're dealing with clients. And sometimes, and I come from a long contact center background, sometimes the contact center can feel very tactical. You know, we've got an 800 number, we've got an email address, we've got a website. We need to have something to take on this volume of inquiries, right? And other times it's almost a struggle from a business value standpoint. And it is such a critical, you are the face and sound of that customer. And a lot of times companies don't think of it like that. So when you look at this kind of transition, how do you tie it back into business value? How do you tie it back into that experience to help a company drive for its business values?
Well, that is a great question that we did not prepare. I love that. That makes me think of so I just moved to this new house, and we had to have an exterminator come. And that person, clearly working an hourly wage, but they are the face of the company. And so that person had an application. This is off the cuff, folks. We did not prep this. This person had an application on their phone that was able to identify, okay, here's the plants and the trees that Kira has in her yard, her backyard. Here's the millipedes, guys. They're really not cute, but they were crawling all around the basement floor. So
I've seen them.
taking pictures of these bugs, and the application is recognizing that. And all that is to say, he's the face of the company. He's definitely not making the most money in any way, shape, or form, but he's empowered in the moment. And so if you have the ability to empower your customer-facing teams with as much information to solve that question, but also not have to keep checking back through documentation, through supervisors, if they are empowered to solve decisions on their own, that ultimately brings more revenue to a customer. Because yes, we did upgrade to the mosquito plan as well in that scenario. But I'm going to do business with them moving forward because it made good use of my time. My time wasn't wasted. He was informed. And so serving up the right information at the moment it is needed to whoever I am engaging with on whatever channel, that's where the ROI comes from. And that is where revenue comes from. And your CFOs will absolutely respond to that business case.
Yeah, great, Garrett. That's brilliant. And I sorry to throw you a curveball, but I know that when you were out talking, I mean, a lot of it is you got to tie it back to business value. Yeah. So I know that. I know I didn't cue you up on that, but that's a great answer, and that's spot on. So I appreciate that. So often we've got this graduation, and we're taking a company, and we're technologists, so we're always talking from the technological standpoint, taking them from point A to point B, and this technology is quicker, faster, better, whatever. But I think what a lot of people underestimate is the impact it has on your workforce, the impact it has on change management within that organization. So can you give us any insights to what maybe people should be thinking about from a change management perspective as they go through this transition?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the question, Mike. And I think as you just so eloquently said, I think there's a natural trap when we talk about moving from one technology solution to another to be very hyper-focused on the technology and even the supporting processes. But ultimately, when we talk about that value realization and how we ultimately make a better experience, oftentimes it's coming down to the human who's using the technology. So we're not just graduating as a business. We're not just graduating from a technical platform. We need to think about how we're helping our people graduate as well. Going back to our analogy of moving from high school, say, to college, it's not like you step into college and suddenly you know everything. No, it's a long, drawn out process. And there's a lot of people, professors, guides, people that are helping you through that to acquire those new skills. So when we talk about how we seize this value, and I really liked how you articulated this, Patrick, not just where does our business need to be in 24 months, but what do we need our people to do in 24 months? Because the fact of the matter is, if we're asking more from our technology, while there's going to be efficiencies, there's going to be improvements in life, we're also asking for more from our people. We're asking for a more mature workforce and people to use more information, more complexity to still provide that exemplary service that we expect. So I would say, as we said earlier, I think there's a natural tendency to try to recreate what we know. As humans, even if it's not the most efficient, we're creatures of habits. We've made it work up until now. We need to give people time and that opportunity to ask questions. I think you said it really well too, Patrick. Change is tough. We have to get in and we have to start asking questions. That's not just the core project team, the product owners who's involved in this transition. It's all the way down to the end user. Because despite everything that we may know about our day-to-day end users, I guarantee there's insight that those end users that are living it day in and day out, I guarantee they'll have more value, things that we can bring up sooner and implement faster, ultimately leading to that greater value for not just you and your organization, but for the customers as well. So everything we do in change management is fighting to pull all of that forward to more people in your organization. We don't have to come out day one and say with absolute confidence that it's going to do A, B, and C. But you know what? If we introduce it to all these different people and introduce concepts and demos throughout the build, instead of just saying, hey, by the way, you've got a test next week and you have to graduate, it makes it such a smoother and more fruitful journey for everybody involved.
So it sounds like pulling those teams together earlier than later and getting them involved is a big step forward. I mean, what are some of the forums or some of the ways you've seen that done well?
Absolutely. It's really all about creating a community. Now, of course, we're going to have a dedicated change management specialist to help guide people through this transformation. But at the end of the day, it's one or two people against your entire organization. We can't do it alone, which is what makes change management so engaging, but at the same time challenging, because we need you as leaders within your organization to help us form that network. And some of those examples would be, if we're developing iteratively, say, and delivering sprint demos, showing increment build and getting feedback, we'll do that with the core project team, but we'll also take those demos out and we'll take them to a subset of end users, a subset of SMEs, maybe even some people that we know have had difficulties with previous transformations, because frankly, you can't hide from the change. Users aren't stupid, for lack of a better term. They know if we're trying to sell them a false bill of goods, it's better to lean in and co-create with those end user insights than try to just assume we know what's best for everybody. So we'll do champion programs for end users. Even in some of these instances where we're introducing across very large enterprise, we might even have a subset of, we meet monthly with managers and middle managers to make sure that not just their people know what's coming, but they know how to prepare their people and they know how to lead their people through that change. So it really is reaching all of the nooks and crannies of your organization, because change happens one person at a time. And it's the goal to make sure that all of those people are cared for.
Yeah, that's great, Austin. And I'll just put in a little plug. I mean, I've been around technology a long time and helped companies go from platform A to platform B. And when they're on platform B, it's not always the most pleasant experience. But when you see change management come in and when you see that, just that thought about that and the process about it and the conversations about it, that a lot of times companies don't look to their technology partners to provide, even especially here at NeuraFlash, where you and your team have been involved. It's just people end up just in a lot better shape coming out the other end of it. So you and your team do a great job, and that's I think it's something you should be thinking about when you're even in the technology business, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
great. So we talked a little bit. I'm gonna throw another curveball. We talked a little bit about change, and Patrick, you kind of set up a little bit, and Kerry, you did as well. Like things change, and it could be a new channel, it could be acquisition, it could be a lot of things. But something that just started as of last year and has become water cooler talk everywhere. I was just at a guys golf weekend, and all of my buddies that don't know much about technology were all of a sudden experts on ChatGPT and the impact it's going to have on the world. But here's another example of something new, something that's kind of come out, something that's created a lot of excitement. I mean, not just in our technology marketplace, but in the ethos as well. So Patrick, I know that you in your career have been kind of leading edge on a lot of different things that have come out and had a response to, and have been able to take and roll into actually being able to help our customers help their customers. I'd love you just to talk a little bit about the impact of ChatGPT and what you're seeing. And Salesforce had a big announcement today on it. So just love to get you to chat a little bit about that. Patrick, mute. There we go.
Yep.
ChatGPT only had something for that.
Thank you for noticing my lips move. Yeah, Salesforce had their first release of the Einstein GPT for Service capabilities that came out just this week, and there are many more coming in August next month. But of course, the general topic of generative AI has certainly been top of mind for many people in all different walks of life, but especially in those who are connected to business systems, business applications, how we communicate with our customers, how we run our businesses. And I think the fact is that AI and generative AI are some of the most exciting innovations in technology that we have seen certainly in decades. And the potential is phenomenal and as yet also not fully even understood. And I think where the market is today is kind of hungry for information, but also able to move forward fairly quickly. I think some of the things that are being developed by Salesforce as an example are purpose-built use cases, which can be turned on and kind of enabled pretty straightforwardly without kind of building a lot around it that you have to dream up yourself. But I think the capabilities there are just one example, as you said, Michael, of sort of what's coming, what's new, things that you can take advantage of, things that people are thinking about, that idea of where is my company going to be in 24 months. I think, one of those areas is certainly that we will be using more AI, whatever that looks like for your specific company. You will certainly be using more than you are today. And it certainly will impact how we work, how we communicate, how we get things done, the shape of our individual roles, how much of it can we leverage technology from so that we're not starting from a blank page for a lot of the work that we do. But also, how do we use it to better our business? How do we use it to better understand our business, to chart a path forward, to help customers more quickly, more accurately, even to communicate and in many ways be closer to our customers because we have great technology who's doing the legwork and we're able to then focus on the customer in the right appropriate times or while we're on a call with them, while the technology does some of the legwork that would otherwise be distracting to us. And so in order to take advantage of those kind of capabilities, both today's and tomorrow's, you definitely want to think about, putting yourself on a platform for agility, putting yourself on that platform for growth, and in particular, bringing together your data and your processes and your people, and even the place to take action, the action platform that is the outcome of being able to use technologies like this and get great answers. For example, nobody is getting business value out of just connecting to a GPT service or a generative AI service. They're getting business value because of what they do with that answer. So it takes data to go in, and then it takes interpretation and then action on the back end in order to derive business value. And that means taking into account your business processes, taking into account different technologies that augment this, like RPA, for example, to automate, once you get an answer, then what do you do with it? And as Austin said also, very, very strong center on how this impacts your people. How do you use technologies like this to elevate your people, to elevate what they do best, to elevate their communication and connection with your customer. And we're very focused on that at NeuraFlash, and we were at Salesforce as well when I was there. I still are at Salesforce. And I think that concept is one that I think leads a lot of people toward that graduation step. And the reason is that you want to have in place a capability and a platform that's capable of pulling together your data, your agent experience, the way that the agents work, your processes and your business logic, and then take action on it. And those kind of platforms are platforms like Salesforce. They're not necessarily platforms like a ticketing system or like a more transactionally focused system. And so the desire for those kind of capabilities and the vision for the fact that they will be using more and more of those as the time goes on is one of those driving forces for people to consider making a change, but also speak to us about the foundation that needs to be in place. What is it that I need to build so that I can optimize and take advantage of some of that newest technology that's available today and the technology that's coming tomorrow? And really getting customers on that kind of platform, that kind of capability map, that kind of solid footing is really something that we focus on a lot at NeuraFlash. And we really think about customer success as leaving that in a much better place than we were when we started, and setting them up for that, future growth and deeper capabilities that they're going to be leveraging from technologies like generative AI. I could talk for hours and hours around Gen AI, but I know that that's not what this webinar is all about. But we couldn't be more excited about the technology, but we also are spending a lot of time with customers making sure they have the right foundation to not just use it, but to optimize it and get the most out of it in the direct benefit of their business and their customers.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Patrick. And I think you bring up, at the 30,000 foot level, one of the big advantages to working with Salesforce, it's not just their service cloud, it's not just customer service. It is a platform that you can go around customer acquisition, around customer service, around sales. You look at the things that the MuleSoft capabilities with connectivity to the back end. It's that platform play that, especially when you take something like a new technology like GPT and layer it over it, you don't want to just layer it over one sliver of it. You want to have a strategy that can help your entire customer experience. Kira, I'll go back to you again. You're in the field a lot, and I think that when you can tell that wider story, it's truly a benefit, because it's something that Zendesk cannot have that same conversation. But I'm sure if someone's just wanting a new CRM, it's harder to expand that conversation to get people to understand that. Like, what are some of the challenges you see with that, and what are some of the ways that you're able to get around that with your sales team to be able to widen the conversation?
I love that question. So I prompt account teams to ask this today, and I did it when I was in the field myself, is really asking who you're engaged with, what's going to get you promoted at the end of this year? Okay, great. How does that tie up to what the board is focused on or the C-suite is focused on? And really trying to understand and connect the dots between where is this company heading, and keeping it technology agnostic. Like, think about it. We've got folks on the phone here that are trying to think about, okay, maybe I should or shouldn't do something different. Well, I'm asking you now, noodle on that. What's going to get you promoted this year? And how does that task or that effort, that output, how does that relate to where the business is going and where the business wants to grow? And then let's start thinking about, okay, how could technology support that? Don't think about it in terms of Salesforce, or don't think about it in terms of the CRM, but I would venture to guess that we have some sort of solution. We have some sort of processes that exist on the platform that can really help you solve for those challenges and not just be seen as a ticketing solution or a CRM. So it's to really put a fine point on it, it's thinking bigger about the end goal of the company and your role in that journey.
Yeah, it's having that bigger picture view of it. Yeah. Great. Austin, obviously new things coming along have a big impact on, we talked about it a little bit before, but just love to get some of your insights on how you see this changing the the landscape as we move forward.
Yeah, I've heard the word agility thrown around a few times now, and I think we've been talking about it a lot in the technology sense. We want a platform that can adjust and react to changing market needs. But I think as we consider the people using the technology, there's this concept of change agility as well, which is, I think, in something we've probably all lived. We're coming from a time where SOPs used to be written in stone and where things didn't change for years on end. And when we introduce a new platform, whether that be Zendesk or Salesforce or these new complexities, suddenly we can engage with the users and get more feedback, and we can change it again the following month. The old ways of having a very, I don't want to say slow moving, but overly structured way of checks and balances and making sure that we're preparing for that change can sometimes become a hindrance to this idea of innovation and moving fast, failing fast sometimes. So it's important when we think about what we want our organization to be like in a few years. It's also, what do we want the general temperament and personality of people to be as they approach change, as we continuously bombard them with new technologies, new things, promising that it's going to be better. I think ChatGPT and all the generative AI has been an amazing case study in technology adoption. I won't say I was one of the first people in, but I was tuned into it maybe the beginning of this year, maybe a little ahead of the broader curve. And I can't tell you how many times I went hand over hand to explain how this could change everything, how it can write your emails, how it can, if you're thinking about anything, just stop and ask generative AI. I guarantee you'll understand the power within 10 minutes. Despite that, getting on LinkedIn, talking to my peers, my team, my parents, my grandparents, coming back 4 months later and asking them about it, there'll be something to the effect of, oh yeah, like I remember when you told me about it, I've seen a video or something. It seems pretty cool, but they haven't actually used it. Just because it's better doesn't mean that people are going to use it, which is all the more important that we bring people to water, bring horse to water here and show them, make them understand that it's better. Because without that, I'm still waiting to upgrade to Windows 11. I think I've still got 2 updates on my phone right now that I refuse to accept because I am locked into the habits that I've formed now until somebody comes and shows me how it's going to make my life that much better. And you need that helping hand to make the end user understand they're not as involved as we are. They haven't been sourcing with vendors. They haven't been living the life of a product owner per se, maybe these past many years. So they don't get all the value that we see and get so excited about, and sometimes gloss over because we're so focused on getting to the end. So the more that we can help people and almost beat them over the head with why this is better, the better the result. The more adoption, the more we're going to see value from this technology investment.
Yeah, no, that's great, Austin. And I kind of go back to Kara, you brought up that great example of the person coming out to your house, the critter control folks. And, that critter control person who's an expert in controlling critters, but now has a device in their hand that helps them and helps enhance that relationship. And I bet you they're not technologists. I bet you they didn't write that app. And you just imagine all the things that went into creating that. It's kind of like that tip of the spear and enabling them with that technology and just enhancing the way that they do business and making you a happier customer and getting rid of those little millipedes in the basement. So
absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
So couple things. Number one, we are getting questions, so feel free to write your questions in and we'll answer those here in a few minutes. But, Patrick, as people are starting to look at this, are there any best practices or any ideas you have around that? Like here, like the top couple things you should be thinking about as you start going down this path?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple learnings over the years that stand out to me in watching customers go through this transition or similar one. And I think we probably should insert here that you're not alone in thinking about and going through this transition. There are literally thousands of customers who have made this same journey. And NeuraFlash has tons of experience helping customers on that path, as does Salesforce. But I remember a really, really large technology company, one of the largest technology companies in the world, actually, that was eventually going to move over about 40,000 users onto the Salesforce Service Cloud platform from their prior system, which was an outdated, old bloated system. And they got started with one chat queue of 36 agents. That was their first foray, and they knew that they had this bigger plan. but they wanted to focus on learnings and bringing the users into the fold. And I think, to tie into what Austin's talking about, that's something that I learned very, very clearly through that transition and a few others. If you bring the users into the fold and listen to them about what's working well and what's not working well, and then sprinkle in just a few of their, pain points in the solution, the new solution, they become agents for change. And in this huge organization, which, had a lot of momentum and a lot of gravity in the way that they did things in the past, they now saw this small group that was moving first as being the destination they wanted to go to. Other users were asking for the new system. Other users were pulling the change instead of resisting and being pushed the change on top of them. And all it took was bringing a few users into those conversations early about what should the design look like, what's working well, what's not working well that we should leave behind, and what's working well that we should bring forward. And oh, by the way, the new platform has some new capabilities that we should consider, which I'll get into in a minute. But that aspect of making people feel heard and making the process, part of the process is pulling them into the circle, was huge. And the dividends that paid in that organization, which can be very difficult to transition 40,000 people to a new system and a new way of doing certain parts of their job. But being able to have the agents actually proselytize for you and say, this is a better system. This is better than what we did before. I like it for these reasons. We made videos about, how happy they were with the new capabilities. And then people were asking for the change. I think that was a huge lesson to be learned. I think the other one was around another customer that I had that was in a high-tech field that was actually focused on flash storage. And they were a very high growth company making this exact transition from Zendesk to Service Cloud. And one of the mistakes that they made early on in the project was to try to replicate everything that they had and only replicate what they had. And although that certainly can be a path forward in a bigger project, one of the challenges you can run into is the end user impact is that they don't feel any goodness from the new system for the things that it's capable of doing that the old system wasn't. So they only feel the quote negative or the change management aspect of the way that I used to process this. I now have to do it differently. And they don't feel the positive of what the new capabilities are available to them. So the other lesson that I learned there was to make sure that as you're plotting your transition forward, that you take advantage of some of the things that are possible now that weren't possible before, because those become a trade-off and a balance to some of the change that the users will naturally have to go through. Because if you show them the positives, then it's okay that some of the things aren't going to work exactly the same. No two pieces of software work exactly the same. It's not about better or worse. They're just not exactly the same. And so if you can show some of the pluses to go along with that, minor pain, that goes a long way to trying to provide balance instead of just focusing yourself on how we used to work and trying to replicate that. So those are a couple, examples from customers that I worked with that are now, extremely happy and very, very, growth mindset. But over the years, taking advantage of what's available and making sure to bring users in early to create a positive change management experience instead of a negative one are things that I would encourage every project team to think about as they're starting to embark on this kind of transition.
Yeah. No, that's
plus
great.
one. I
Plus
echo
one.
everything. Yeah, I have countless stories that absolutely echo everything Patrick just shared. Customers that had to go live in a very short window and made champions of their top users to how they leverage the newness. So everything Patrick just said, absolutely, it's worth considering.
Yeah. And at NeuraFlash, we're fortunate enough. We've been around for 7 years. And we started 100% in the Service Cloud bots area. And from that, we started getting involved in a lot of these transitional, off of one platform and onto another. And that's, one of the reasons we have, people like Austin on the team, like the change management side of it, the looking at the bigger picture side of it. We've seen things that work, we've seen things that haven't worked. And but we're founded by technologists. Things like your data mapping is kind of interesting, moving from Zendesk into Salesforce Service Cloud. What are some things you should be thinking about there? The user interface, the multiple channels. I mean, things we're not really digging deep into today, but they're all part of that process and things you need to think about from an implementation standpoint. So you want to start teeing those things up earlier than later in the process. So I'm going to go round robin here and just ask for any final thoughts, and then we'll move this forward. So, Austin, based on what we've said and based on where we're at, any final thoughts on customers thinking about embarking on this transformation?
Helping people through change is a journey. It's not just a training event at the end of implementation. So do everything we can to stretch that out and truly give people time and space to learn and ask questions and engage, and we'll only be better for it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Kira?
I have heard from countless executives at our customers that do not think about what's going to make today better when embarking on a technology transformation or a digital transformation. Truly think about what is going to make the future better. And that's how you approach making that change.
No, I think, yeah, having that vision into the future of why we're gonna go through this pain, because it's not without pain, right? So
Right.
with pain, you want some gain. So being able to focus in on what that gain is ultimately going to be, I think is a great way to frame it.
Nailed it.
Patrick, any closing thoughts?
I think back to where we started, which was the concept of graduation, right? This is a very positive thing for your organization, for you as an individual, to help transition your company to a position of future growth. And I think, we look at it that way. We don't look at it as a technology project. We look at it as a business project. And it's great that your business is at a point of growth where you're considering needing to make that kind of change. We're here to help. Salesforce is here to help. We've done it before. Lots and lots of companies have been down this path that we've learned from and can bring that to your experience. And the most important thing that we have as an outcome is setting you up for that future. It's not about day zero, getting a green check mark and walking away like some consultants maybe in the world. We're really about kind of setting you up for that positive future for yourself, your business, your customers, and hopefully for a long-term relationship. So thank you guys for attending. Thank you, Michael, for hosting. But that's what I would leave everybody with.
No, that's great. And Casey, I think we've got just kind of a wrap-up slide if we have that. There we go. Yeah, let's get started. We have, and Patrick touched on it, we have a lot of different things we can bring, some documentation, some things that we've been able to bring to kind of help through this journey. We've been through it a lot, so we'd love to help you on it. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or my email or my cell phone. It's all there, so you can copy the screen and get a hold of us. But I'm going to give you 10 minutes back. How many vendors give you time back? This is pretty awesome. But I hope to give you the 10 minutes back that you reach out and schedule 10 minutes with me. I would love to spend some time chatting with you about this journey. So again, I want to thank Kira. I want to thank Patrick. I want to thank Austin for your time. I thought you guys all did a great job. And again, I appreciate everybody's time online that's with us today. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.